Good afternoon and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning. I'm delighted to be joined today by the performance coach himself, Mr. Jason Cannon. Jason has had plenty of experience over the few years he's been going. He's been set up his own estate agency. He's worked for Keller Williams, he's worked for Spicer Hart. So I look forward to unpicking all your learnings from over the years, Jason. So welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. That's a lovely introduction. I'm not sure we've got enough time to do the whole of my life, but perhaps a little bit of it, which might be useful. Yeah. How are you today?
I am excellent, thank you. All good. So looking forward to playing some walking football shortly. So which will keep me out of mischief. So Jason, come on then. Start with what do you think is the most part of your career where you've had most of your learnings?
That's a really great question. When I sold my business back in 2017, I thought I was pretty good at what I did, and then I realised when I looked outside of my little space. That actually I knew very little. I've always been quite a humble person. I've always been learning based and prepared to, accept that I don't know that much. But actually, when I stepped out of that, and that's probably that actually started in 2006. I did an NLP diploma, neuro linguistic programming, which I know you probably know quite a lot about. I did that in 2006. I'd already done a course in hypnotherapy and communication, which obviously goes hand in hand with being an estate agent, communicating with clients, and that's kind of when that journey sort of deep dive into myself and to how I was, how I'm wired and what the things that sort of fuel me and ignite me and light me up. My father was quite an inspirational man. He was a teacher and he ran a couple of quite successful schools. I was never intellectual enough to be a teacher. So at 17, when I had the opportunity to leave college and go and get this job, earn £25 a week, I jumped at the chance. £25 a week wasn't a lot of money even then. And that was my journey into learning, and I've been really fortunate, Stephen, that I only realised this actually a few years ago. Been really fortunate to have been mentored by some amazing people. Most of them aren't with us anymore, sadly, but that kind of desire to improve myself, that desire to continue that journey into mastery was reignited probably 2006, and I just love learning. I love learning and sharing. It's what excites me. It's what fuels me every day.
Fantastic. So are you happy to share with us some of your learnings that stood you in good stead? I mean, what's really interesting, you say you actually sold your business, which you had for over 17 years, which was incredible. And you felt that that's when you only started learning. So I'm sure there must have been loads of lessons, one, starting a business. So how was that? And then two, building it, recruiting, how do you go about and recruit the right people as well? So I'm sure there's loads of lessons you can share from that, please.
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson, and I've shared this with lots of people, is that whenever I employed anybody, rule number one, they had to be smarter than me, which wasn't particularly hard because I'm not the smartest person in the room. So they've got to be smarter than Jason. And, rule number two, they've got to fit in with the team. Culturally, I always worked in offices when I was employed and when I had my own business where we had some fun. We had a laugh. That was really important, that you had some fun. And, my reflection sometimes is that, we're too serious, aren't we, Stephen, very often? We've got to have a laugh. Laughing is important. Having fun is important. Doesn't mean you can't be professional whilst you do that. So that a couple of simple rules there. What I think I did pretty well when I had that business was that it was very client focused. 100% it was client focused. Being profitable, making money was just a byproduct of that focus. We had that hyper focus as a business. And the reason, we grew a lettings business really, really quickly. And that was because we were very client focused. And what we did differently, perhaps to a lot of businesses, and I still see this now, Stephen, is that they don't focus on the tenant enough. It's true that tenants are treated very much like second-class citizens. And actually, we know that 30% of tenants are also property owners. So another good reason why you want to look after tenants. But, most businesses don't. They focus on the landlord, don't focus on the tenant. So one of the things that I impart, and I try and teach to businesses that I work with, is that you've got to have a better focus on your client, and you've also got to consider your tenants in that conversation. And that was one of the things that I did well. Do the free things, because like lots of people that were born in the 60s, power cuts in the 70s, 4-day weeks, blah, blah, blah. My parents taught me to do the free stuff first versus spending money. And when I started that second business in 2001, that was one of the things that we did pretty well. So we wore out a lot of shoes. We spent a lot of time talking to people, and that meant that part of my weekly routine was that I would go on a walkabout. It would be my walk and talk. So I was very, very, very visual in my town, and you would see me walking around, talking to shopkeepers, business owners, anybody that had 5-10 minutes to have a conversation about business. How's life? How's things? What's going on? How can I help you? And that I enjoyed that. Good exercise as well, albeit that I was walking around in London, so a bit of smoggy air. But that was a good weekly practice. And then the expectation was that people would then see me out on a regular basis. They could stop me, they could talk to me, have property conversations. And that was one of my best lead generation tools.
Okay, where did that come from? I'm interested. So, because I agree, it's all about walking. Yes.
Good question. I don't know actually, Stephen. One of my very first mentors was a Kiwi, a guy called Dennis Quinn. I was a teenager, and Dennis was late 30s, early 40s, and he used to just take me for a walk. We worked in Sidcup. We opened an office together. We'd worked together previously in another office. We'd got on really well, and he used to just say to me, "Come on, let's go for a walk." And we'd go for a walk. We'd go for a wander. He'd impart some great tale. He was a storyteller, Stephen, and he would tell you a story about a situation, and that would really embed that message. We'd go for a half across the road as well, possibly a pint. But he was a storyteller and he was a walker. So he imparted that knowledge in me. And I say the same thing to agents now about getting out into your community, being seen out in your community, talking, walking. And actually, we see so much more, don't we, Stephen, when we go out? We see the builders' vans, we see the skips, we see people walking their dogs. We're not just going from a listing to a valuation to a viewing. So, having that hyper focus as the local agent and getting out and walking, you see so much more, and people see you. So I would encourage that. It's good for our mental health, isn't it? Get outside.
100%. And one of the things I've learned is talking to people just gives you so many opportunities. Everybody's curious to know what's going on in the property market. And if you let them know that you are that local property expert, that local property specialist, everybody wants to know. And then by asking disruptive questions, that opens up more opportunities for you. So it's, for me, it's great.
A good friend of mine talks about don't be 007, don't be the secret agent. And one of the things that I say I had this conversation with an agent who was just starting out a couple of weeks ago, already got a couple of listings, doing well. So we're doing some coaching with him, and he's spending his time in certain venues. He's spending his time at the gym. He's spending his time at the coffee shop, in the hotel. He's got a structured diary and a structured plan already. And on the back of his laptop, he's got a bit of paper stuck to it that says, "I'm an agent, ask me." Because, as you said, people are interested in property, aren't they? They're interested in what's going on, and I think all too often agents, we work in that space in the high street sometimes, or in an office where we lock it up, we go home, and we're not really interested in the community locally. And when we get home, we don't talk about what we do, why we do it, and we're just, "Oh, you're an agent." So we're missing a trick. We should be more open, shouldn't we, Stephen?
Definitely. Well, I've seen a couple of agents sit in a coffee shop with an A-frame board saying "open for business. Come and have a chat to me as well." And I think in Australia I saw one who had a surfboard up there, so he literally takes his surfboard in with him, and just uses it as an office. Hi, I'm an agent. Come and talk to me. And again, actually, in a market where there are so many agents out there, something that makes you different, makes you stand out. As you said before, I like the word fun. Actually, it is a little bit of fun, isn't it? It's a little bit different. You want people to be remarking about you, chatting about you, and that's a great way of doing it. So
I'm on a mission to empower entrepreneurs to achieve results, and by focusing on the right action and the right processes and the right goals. I have this concern for a lot of these new business owners. We know that there's some great self-employed business models out there now, but I think my concern for a lot of those agents, Stephen, is that they're not part of a gang, of a tribe, of a group of people. We are tribal as human beings, and we miss out on that when we work on our own. You and I have worked in offices, and we enjoy the banter, we enjoy the fun, we sponge, we learn through osmosis, we pick up good habits, we gravitate to interesting and people that help us with work. A lot of people that are starting their businesses are now missing out on that learning. They're missing out on that journey and that fun. And we've seen that a lot with mental health, with youngsters now, with schools crying out for mental health ambassadors. So I'm fearful of that. I had 15, 17 years working in an office with lots of other people, experiencing different cultures, different opportunities, and a lot of agents now don't have that. That's a worry. And I think another reason why you choose to work with someone like yourself or someone like me, you've got someone you can lean on, you've got someone you can lean into when things get tough, which they invariably will and inevitably will. So there is a concern there for me. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think what's good now is we've got agents together out there that's making a massive difference in the industry. So there's a lot of support that's happened in the last 2-3 years, which is great. I think agents now are collaborating a lot more, which is fantastic to see as well. In my day, there was no collaboration. You used to absolutely test everybody that was around you. That definitely improved, which is absolutely fantastic to see. It's great that agents together offer something that can really, really help people. And I think, going back a couple of things. One, I 100% agree with you about lettings and tenants. We would see tenants as or they just weren't treated the right way, very simply. And as you
Yeah.
pointed out, 30% of tenants are property owners, but more importantly, I think we did a survey, and 80% of our tenants live locally. In which case, there's are you cross-checking it with your customer base to see whether you've been round there, because you may well have the landlord's details. But so many agents just don't do the basics of actually taking the tenant's current address, so they're missing out on opportunity. And actually, a lot of the time, it's these little 1% that make a massive difference.
Yeah.
Again, it's just looking at that. What fascinates me, and I'd be interested on your take on this, and you talked about implementation, is there's loads of great stuff. And, I remember, I think people now, there should be no excuse for people to self-learn. With YouTube, all the fantastic podcasts that are out there. You've got the House of Property, you've got the World Class Agent, you've got the High Performance Podcast, you've got the Diary of a CEO, you've got the Tom Ferry, Tom Panos, John McGrath. So there's so much learning out there for people to do, which is great. But so many people just leave it on the shelf. They don't use it. So how are you getting people to actually take action and implement it? Because that's the most important thing, really. It's great coming and seeing you and me and loads of the other people out there. But if people don't take action and implement it, how's their business ever going to grow and succeed and move?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've talked about a lot in the past, Stephen, is understanding people's pain points. We're all afraid of something. So, understanding human nature as I do tells me that if I ask the right questions of somebody to understand them, there's the potential that will unlock that pain. We'll find that pain, we'll find the motivation, the real motivation, and we'll then help them get off the step and take the first step. Procrastination is a massive challenge, isn't it? A huge challenge. And we're all guilty of it at some point. But what fuels you? What excites you? Talk to me about the things that you do on a daily basis that really get you off the couch. And then when you ask that question, where do you feel that in your body? Because that's relevant as well, isn't it? So for me, it's the quality of my questions with an agent, with an entrepreneur, getting to understand them. And you ask the human brain a question, it will go away and find the answer. So the quality of your questions, it isn't statements, it isn't go and do this. How are you going to feel having done this? How did that make you feel? And where did you feel that? Selling it versus telling it. And that, very often that takes time. And, having a coach or a consultant, I'm not afraid to challenge somebody. I'm happy to be their accountability partner, but I'll get permission from you to challenge you on certain things because you've told me, I'm motivated by this. This is a common challenge, isn't it, with agents going out talking to sellers. 0 to 10, Mr. Brown, how motivated are you to move today? 10 being you're not negotiating on this, you're moving because you have to because of X, Y, and Z. Or it's a 2 or a 3, it's a want versus a need. And actually, if you work in that space where it's your business, you then have a choice. I choose to work with people who are 10s, 8s, or 9s maybe, and those that are 2s and 3s, that it's a want and not a need. Maybe they have the opportunity to say, maybe we'll choose not to work together on this occasion, Stephen, because I can choose to work with motivated sellers. There's the huge difference there, isn't there, between a listing model and a sales model in the real estate world. You and I want to work, you and I want to work in a sales model, don't we? We don't want to work in a listing model. But the vast majority of agents work in a listing model. They don't work in a sales model.
Okay, so people that are watching this that are new, would you be kind enough to explain what is the difference between listing and selling?
Well, very simply, and I think our friend Mr. Watkin pointed this out quite eloquently, that your typical listing agents will move about 45% of their clients. So 55% of their listings, 55% of their opportunities, they won't move those people. If you work in a sales model, then you want to be moving probably 70, 80% of your clients. So there is a difference. If you want market share, if you want the pie chart to show that you're the number one agent by listings, is that great for your client? If you only move 4 or 5 of your 10, that's not great. That's not great results, is it? We wouldn't accept that in any other industry. If you and I are running a restaurant and only 4 of our 10 customers were happy and they got a meal, they got served, that wouldn't exactly be excellence, would it? So for me, that, understanding that as an agent, working with the business owner and explaining that, this is why I choose to work in a sales model and not a listing model. Can I explain that to you, Mr. Vendor, Mrs. Vendor? And demonstrating it with your numbers, knowing your numbers. Something I've been talking to some of my clients about this week. And my observation would be, Stephen, that they don't know their numbers well enough.
I can agree with you. I've been in this, and you go into, right, let's start looking at your numbers. Let's find these ways where we can get these 1%. So it's going to make a massive difference if you continually be 1% better every day. And they look at you as if you're an alien from outer space. What do you mean numbers? What are you talking about? So makes our jobs more interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes, going back to that education piece, Stephen, sometimes one of the first things I do with an agent is I talk about their mission and their vision. I talk about foundation and structure for the business. Get that right from day one. Yes, you want listings. Yes, you want sales. You want to find some clients, but get the foundation right. If we were talking elite sport, we would get our sleep right. We'd get our nutrition right. We'd get our exercise regime right before we start competing. And that should be the case, really. My view would be, let's get the foundation right before we start listing houses, selling houses. What's your value proposition? And can you explain that to a client in 30, 40 seconds? Jog first before you start sprinting. So look at your diary, have a structure for your week. What does a great week look like? Put your family time in there, put your social time, your date nights, your family time, your kids' time, then put in your listing appointments, your lead generation time, but also put in your learning time. I've been doing this for 40 years, and I'm not a black belt yet. I'm still learning. I listen to Stephen Brown. I listen to Chris Watkin. I listen to Tom Panos. I listen to James Clear. I listen to Stephen Bartlett. Because I want to be a master of what I do. I want to be a master communicator. I want to be able to understand people better than I do today. So, am I ever going to get there? No. Life is that it's a journey, isn't it? It's what can I learn every day? What can I then? How can I embed that learning? Well, if I share it with people, it's going to embed it. And then I ask for feedback. And depending on how the feedback is, I then might change that approach to that learning.
100%. Look, for me, every day is a learning day. There are far too many people that are know-it-alls rather than learn-it-alls. And it's and it's finding those people who are willing to learn it all every day. And as you rightly pointed out, talked about Chris Watkin, you talked about Tom Panos. I love the fact that you talk about James Clear, and you were talking about the structure on your day. So for me, Atomic Habits, James Clear, exceptional book. His weekly emails are exceptional as well, his 3-2-1s. So if you don't subscribe to that, please do. So James Clear, I don't want anything for it. They're just absolutely exceptional. Well worth it. And there's loads of fantastic questions on there as well, not only to ask yourself, but to ask your colleagues and to challenge each other, which makes a massive difference. So I love what you say about being a master. Obviously, you have coached, mentored loads of top performers. What would you say are the top 5 qualities of a top performer?
If you're competitive, that helps. You've got to know what you're going for. So you've got to know what the goal is, what's the aspiration, what's the dream, and then also reflect back on that and what's the reality of where you are. What do you need to fill that gap between where you are and where you want to get to? You've got to be consistent, and you've got to separate the urgent from the important. And, again, as humans, we're hardwired for instant gratification, aren't we, Stephen? We want instant results. We want the 6-pack. We want the, £1 million in the bank tomorrow. But, experience tells me that we've got to do some of the boring things every day, So I say to business owners and agents, give me 7 or 8 non-negotiable things that you are going to do 5 days a week. Some of them are going to be boring, but the cumulative effect of those actions on a daily basis is going to equal sustainable business. It's going to mean that you're not in a feast and famine relationship with business. So it's those daily actions. It's putting in the important and not just the urgent. So, yes, there's a fire. I'm going to put the fire out. Yes, I'm going to answer the phone because it's an inquiry, it's a market appraisal, it's a listing, it's a viewing. But actually, what are you doing? What important tasks are you also doing every day, regardless of how busy you are, that are going to grow your business in the future? You've got to keep sowing those seeds. And that can be quite tough because we can get wrapped up in, I'm really busy, busy fools and all the rest of it. So you've got to keep, if you are, and, there's no better example than, a Ronaldo or a Roger Federer or, an Andre Agassi, if you're a little bit older. Andre Agassi talked about hitting 2,700 tennis balls every single day. He was already a master. He was already, top 1, 2, 3 in the world for, 10 years or so. But he still hit 2,700 tennis balls every single day. Kobe Bryant talks about his training regime, getting up at 4 a.m. every morning to practice, to have 4 training sessions. And he said by the time other people had realized what he was doing, they were 5 years behind him. There's no way they're going to catch up. So it's being relentless. It's, what are you prepared to sacrifice to be the very best version of you? What are you prepared to sacrifice to be Ronaldo, Roger Federer? What are you prepared to sacrifice to be? I can give you lots of great, I'm not blowing smoke here. There's a lot of people, younger people, shout out to Ian Macbeth. I think the guy's the guy's brilliant. The Baldock brothers, I think they're great people. Steph Walker, we've got some fantastic young people in the estate agency world. Shout out to Chris Buckler, my good friend. There are a lot of amazing estate agents and entrepreneurs and business people. We get a bad rap sometimes, don't we, Stephen? We compare ourselves to the Americans, to the Australians, and we say, well, they're much better than us. Well, we can definitely learn a lot. I have, you have, I'm sure, but we also have some great role models in the UK that we can follow, that that inspire us, that educate us, and lean on those people, because they are very, very good at what they do.
I think you've upset Ian Dobrin here. He wanted to know why he wasn't named in that.
Ian Dobrin and I have been friends for more years than I care to mention. Yeah, he's one of those steady influences in my life, Stephen, and so I'm not embarrassed to say that. And
Okay,
more
well, look,
recently,
coming back, I think you make a fantastic point. So professionals practice before they play. Nobody turns up and just thinks, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna play Djokovic today and it's going to be easy. Federer, yeah. I just turn up. I've been doing this for years. It'd be easy. It's practice, practice. And then it pays off of a court. And you look at Djokovic, and was it 24 Grand Slam titles he's just won now? That doesn't happen through hard work. It's continuous practice all the time. Putting the hours in.
And it's sacrifice, Stephen, isn't it? Sean Fitzpatrick, I was lucky enough to listen to him talking, inspirational All Blacks captain, probably the most famous one. And he talked about that. What are you prepared to sacrifice to be that very best version of you? And he's a really humble guy. And you consider what he's achieved in sport and in business. He took nothing for granted. He was never complacent. And sometimes when we are good at what we do, we get complacent, we get cocky, we get arrogant. And that's a dangerous place to be. So, yes, I'm good at what I do. Yes, I'm confident in what I do, but I'm not old enough and I'm not arrogant enough to say that, I've mastered anything. And that's what keeps my feet on the ground.
Fantastic. Well, look, I'm really conscious of time, and I'm conscious that I've taken up a lot of your time. We've had a number of people that are watching it. They've all come up apart from Simon Paget. So Simon, thanks for watching, as LinkedIn users. I've got no idea who you are, but whoever you are, thank you. We're both incredibly grateful. One lovely comment here. Top guys, both of you. Here you go, somebody else. Such great points being made on this live session. Very informative. Well done. So whoever you are, thank you. We're both really, really grateful. Jason, for people that don't know how to get hold of you, how can they, please?
Best way is probably on LinkedIn. So Jason Cannon Performance Coaching on LinkedIn, or you can find me on Instagram, Jason MJ Cannon. I'm not so big on Instagram. I'm bigger on LinkedIn. But yeah, find me on either of those, Stephen. Or you've got my details, so please feel free to reach out to myself or Stephen if you want any help or advice. Always love to help.
Thank you. And Nick, thanks for watching from Ireland. Nice to have you on board again. So thank you very much, everybody. Wish you a good weekend whenever you're watching it, morning, afternoon or evening. Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. And have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Cheers, Stephen.